Today is a stats day. I am really excited to do this video. I hadn't entered any of the data the whole year of 2023, so I did that this morning. So it's a PJ kind of day. We're getting some warm drinks, something, eat a snack, and we're getting comfy and looking at my stats because I finished 108 books in 2023. I'm going to put it on the screen. Goodreads says 109. I don't know what happened. We're just going to ignore it. 108. The shortest book that I finished was a Dead in Caro, which was 43 pages, and I forgot to include it in my wrap-up. Was it November, December that I finished it? It's a short story part of the same universe as A Master of Djinn. So yeah, I've been really good at actually reading novellas of the series that I'm enjoying, which I used to basically never do that. The longest book that I read this year was Middlemarch by George Eliot. That was a long one. That was a really, really long one. But overall I enjoyed it. I feel like the author did a good job in terms of like writing insufferable characters from the countryside. So English countryside. The average book length in 2023 was 360 pages, which is fairly average. I never really make it a goal, but I kind of aim for like 350 up. Otherwise, I feel like I would be focusing too much on short books. So I feel like I read less long books this year, which we're going to look at my stats for that. But yes, 360. My average rating is 3.4, which sounds low. But when you look at the overall stats on Goodreads of all the books that I read, it's not that bad. Like, yes, a ton of 3 stars, but there's only one star, Les Fourmis, which was absolutely freaking awful. And then a good amount of 2 stars, but overall not that bad. But it's because I've been learning to put down books when I'm not enjoying them, which yay me, but yeah, it's not that bad. I don't feel like it's my best reading year, but I did have, you know, a good amount of 5-star. A lot of them were part of series though, so it feels like I didn't find that many fantastic ones, but overall I feel like I had a good reading year. So let's get to the stats. So month to month. I'll put the stats really big so you can see it, but February was my best reading month, which is weird, but I usually do my 1 week, 1 shelf challenge, and I know that one specific week was classics, and I read like 3 or something, and they were all like 100 pages, so like I feel like it inflates the number a little bit. And usually for me, it's like end of summer, so August, September, you can see I read the most amount of books those months, and it makes sense because I like to go and read outside, in my backyard, at the beach, the park, whatever. Of course, it's summer and like the sun doesn't go down at like 4 o'clock. So that helps because right now I want to go to bed all day, every day. So yes. One step that I never include is the amount of pages per day or like how many days it takes me to finish a book. And I thought it was interesting because again, February is like 2 days per book. That's absolutely insane. And of course, December is like the worst month because I'm busy posting and editing a million videos. That's why I'm late for everything in January. I was feeling the burnout, so we're going to take it a little slower, probably in February. Okay, genre. That is the one thing I was really curious because last year, for the first time ever, my most read genre was nonfiction. And by last year, I'm in 2022. And it was a big challenge for me that year, so it makes sense, but still, it was weird. And we're back to normal. I was right in my past videos I mentioned that I had a feeling it was going to be fantasy, and it is. It is fantasy, so we're fully back to normal. Basically every year, 50% of my reading is fantasy sci-fi, and it can flip-flop, but usually it's fantasy, and that's exactly what happened this year, and I'm happy about it. I've been really finding some great fantasy favorites, and we're feeling like 2024 is going to be like that also. My first vlog of the year, there are some 5-star that are fantasy, so. My third most read genre is nonfiction. So I'm still on a kick. I felt like I wasn't doing as well in 2023, but 14 is great. It's great. And then we go to mystery, thriller, horror. Mystery being the one I have had the best year in terms of numbers. Last year I looked at my stats because I kept saying I don't feel like I have a good time with mystery thrillers. And I had realized that my worst average, like rating wise, per genre was thrillers. So I only read 3 this year. I didn't purposely do it, but I feel like I'm just so over those genres because I feel like I love them in my head, but then when I read them, I don't enjoy them. So that hasn't really changed last year. But you can see that I read a little bit of everything. I'm really happy with that. I'm not planning on changing that. It's just naturally what happens for me. So I'm good. Age group. It used to be 50-50, and for a couple of years it's been vast majority adult. Again, it has not changed, 102, so 94% of my reading was adult books, and 6 that I did finish that were YA. I feel like I did get rid of quite a few during my Read It or Unhaul It challenge that were YA, so they're not included in here. Hi, Charlie. Do you want to say hi to people? I don't know if they're going to be able to see you. It's so dark right now, and you're all dark too. Look at him. He's huge. You were such a tiny baby, and now you're this humongous panther. Page length. I think that's fun. Every year is the same thing. Between 300 and 400 is my most read, and second is 400 and 500. I did feel like I hadn't read as many big books, and yet my stats do show that. There's only 6 that are over 600 pages. There are 10 between 5 and 6, so it's like not nothing, but I did read only 3 that were under 100 and 12 more under 200. So it's not a ton, quite frankly. I thought it was going to be more, but yeah. I feel like I just read a ton of average length books this year. Author gender. Okay, let's talk about this one, because in my best books of 2023, I mentioned at the end of the video that I had just realized that all the books in that video were from female authors. And you know what? I don't care, because nobody would say anything if it was a man doing video with only male authors. Maybe nowadays people would call it out a bit more, but it happens so much. 31% of the books that I read this year were by male authors. It is even less than last year. I think last year was 37. But before that, pretty much every year, it was just naturally 50-50. It's never been a challenge. I don't look at it while I'm doing my reading year. I just like to look at the stats at the end of the year, and yeah, 31%. I'm not planning on making any changes, to be honest. I was curious to see, though, if the books that I was putting down, because in my head it's like, oh, it's probably because I've been putting down more books during the Read It or Unhaul It challenge, and that's not true. It's almost 50-50 male-female authors. What's interesting, though, is different reason I'm putting the book down. Male authors, 90% of the time is, oh, sexism, and I put down the book. Like, not a little bit, it's a lot of it. I feel like we're just so used to making excuses for it and just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's worth it anyway. I'm tired. I'm tired. So, yes, female authors is just a bunch of different other reasons. So, yeah, 31%. And 2 non-binary. One of them is trans also. I'm mentioning it because you might want more recommendation. Actually, Finna. I liked Finna. I think it made it to my most surprising books of the year also. So cool. And it's just because I never started putting the stats of representation in my official documents. So I just mention it every year out loud instead. So I think 15-20 books that I read this year were contained characters that were part of the LGBTQ+ community. And I think that one thing that really changed over the year is that it wasn't a topic of the book, like whatsoever, which is my favorite kind of representation. It's just so normal that it's just there. And even like fantasy books and everything. So I'm happy with it. That's kind of how I like to follow my stats about that. Just like, oh, it's just happening. And I'm just like keeping an eye on it just in case, because the next stats, author's race, I didn't really calculate that my first couple of years on Booktube. And then when I look back, my first year was a half year. I had only read 1 author of color. And that made me realize, okay, maybe I should reevaluate where I'm getting my recommendations. And every year, just naturally, the number has increased, except this year. I believe last year was 33%, 30%, and this year it's 25%. So it's not awful, but when I look back again at the stats, it's pretty easy to figure out why. And it is because Read It or Unhaul It challenge. I am reading more of the books that are on my shelf compared to library, and because most of my books are bought used, and apparently I can basically only find white authors, that's going to affect my numbers. This year is the first year that it switched, and it's going to be probably the same in 2024 unless I just naturally pick up even more from the library or something. But yeah, I'm not too worried. 25% again, it's not awful, but because I have the reasoning, it makes sense. It's just the shelf. And a lot of the books that I used to buy, specifically I'm looking right now at sci-fi, it's basically all white men, because that's what I'm able to find, and that's what I used to find on list. Kind of a little bit over classic sci-fi, to be honest, because again, as mentioned, sexism, racism, homophobia. So yeah. But we're cleaning up the shelf, so eventually they will represent my taste. So I don't think eventually it's going to be a problem, but yes, just something for me to keep in mind in the upcoming years. And then what's the next stats? Oh, again, okay, library. So did I own the books that I read this year? Were they from the library or were they advanced reader copies? This year, only 1 ARC. That's kind of crazy. I thought that's really low. And only 31% from the library, which I think is really low for me, but it's because, again, read it on holiday. So 68% of the books that I read this year, finished this year, were from the books that I own. So because I'm doing that cleanup, and that's without all the ones that I started and didn't finish, right? So yeah, I'm cleaning up the shelf, so it's something that is going to affect my stats, including this one specifically. And same thing with the format. So were they physical books, audiobooks, ebooks, or both? Both being physical and library. And 62% were physical books, which is really big, I feel like. Because the last couple of years, I was reading a lot or listening to a lot of audiobooks. And yeah, that's obviously going to be affected by the cleanup. So 25% audiobooks, 6% ebooks, which I think is pretty good for me, and 6% were both. So yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not planning on changing that because we are doing Read It and Haul It for 2024. I'm so nervous, but I feel like I'm going to start enjoying them more because, again, we're going to get rid of all the ones that are and then all the books I'm buying throughout the year, I'm adding it for the next year. So all my 2023 purchases are in here. So hopefully that means more books that are more about my recent taste. Let me see if I can find which genre this year was my worst, because I think that's funny. I'm seeing a lot of mystery. Oh, shit. And sci-fi, actually. But the classic sci-fi, yeah. That's exactly what I mean. So, I put the Empire of the Ant as a sci-fi, but it's like mystery sci-fi. And then you have The Maid, which is a mystery. The Cruelest Man, which is a mystery. Whispers, the mystery. And then you have the Apollo Murders, that is sci-fi. Hyperion sci-fi. Cytonic sci-fi. Like, yeah. Yeah, and thrillers are still, even though I only have 3 thrillers that I read this year, 2 of them are 2 stars. So yeah, clearly mystery thrillers, but I want to love them so much though. This is so annoying and upsetting. But yeah, looking at the stats now, it makes sense. Of course, it's going to be the classic, really popular sci-fi. I don't trust you, people that make these lists anymore. Like, you have awful taste. Now, let's talk about my goals for 2024. As I've already said, I'm definitely continuing the Read It and Haul It, and I'm aware of what it will affect with my stats. That's fine. We're doing the cleanup. I need to mention officially my Goodreads reading challenge. I've already set it at 100. I've basically done that most years. And I'm really not nervous. I know some people get stressed when it says like, oh, you're ahead or behind by X amount of books. And frankly, I just fix it. I just change it. During the pandemic, like the beginning of the pandemic, I had reduced it because I was in a reading slump. I know a lot of people started reading a ton. Me, it was the opposite. I was too stressed. So I'll just switch up if it happens. But I think I'm going to read, again, 100 this year. I think I'm also going to read a ton of fantasy this year because I've been on a kick. I need to do videos. That's like a tiny goal also, to finally do videos about fantasy, because I kept telling myself that I was going to. And I did a lot of beginner-friendly videos about sci-fi because I feel like it's underrated on Booktube, and I want to start doing that for fantasy. It's not underrated, but I feel like a lot of people love that genre, myself included, so I just always felt like I needed to read a couple more. But I feel like this year, because I'm going to be reading a ton, it's the perfect time to do those videos, get even more recommendation, and like, I can always do like another one, and another one, and another one. Like, I don't know why I'm always stressed that I need to find more favorites first. Last year, one of my goals was to try to find some good mystery thrillers. It did not go well, clearly. And I kind of want to do that again, but I know it's a bad idea, but I want to. I also want to read more sci-fi. Also, I think that sci-fi fantasy, again, they go hand in hand, but it's going to be the case because I have a video coming up, which is going to be the lists of the books that I want to read in 2024. And they're basically winners and nominees for the Nebula and Hugo Awards of the last couple of years. So I feel like I'm going to have a really fantastic year with those specific genres. So I think that that's going to be set. I also have a video coming up for my nonfiction. So This is going to be the third year where I do a video where I announce the ones that I'm adding to my TBR, the ones basically from the library. Because the ones on my physical list I'll also mention in the video, but that's usually when I sit down, go on my two library websites, and then put a bunch of them on my waiting list. And then that's why I ended up reading like 30 something the first year and 14 last year. So we're hoping that, again, we're going to go back to that this year. I have a couple that I've been buying that I'm really looking forward to reading, so that should be okay. And I'll also have a video about classics. I don't know if I'm going to read as many. I mean, I read 8, so it's not that many, but I was feeling the burnt out because I kept reading the really big, intimidating ones. So this year we're going to go with shorter ones. One of my challenges from last year was to post on Instagram, and I did not make one post. In my defense, I don't really talk about it so much, but I've been going through a lot health-wise, but it's looking like maybe I'm starting to feel a bit better. I don't want to say it out loud and jinx it, so not that I even believe in that, but like, we're still gonna cross all our fingers. So I'm hoping that that means I'm gonna have more time and energy to start doing my house redecoration as planned and just have the energy to do everything that I want to do, including posting on Instagram. In my defense, I also ended up with 1 million cats in my house that was not planned, so that took a lot of my time too. But yes, that's kind of my goals. Loosely would like to go on Instagram again. I know people will want to know if I'm planning on doing TikTok videos, and frankly, I'm so overwhelmed already. I also want to start posting on my beauty channel again, and like, I just feel like TikTok is very low on my priority. I'm also from Canada, so I wouldn't make $1 from it. I would have to get sponsorships, which, like, again, that's another stress. So like one day probably would like to, because frankly, who doesn't want more cat videos on the internet? But I have too many things on my plate at the moment, but long term I would like to. And I think that's it. Probably. I'm planning on doing 1 million little challenges like I've always been doing. In February, like I said, I will be doing my 1 week, 1 shelf challenge. I wasn't sure if I was going to just do this one all month, but I like that the 1 week, 1 shelf lets me decide which book on the shelf to pick up. So I feel like it's not going to put me in a reading slump compared to if I do that all month. I think that's it. If I forget anything, I'll let you know in the comment section. I want to know about your stats because I think it's fun. I should do a video soon where I actually compare my years showing you the stats, but doing it every couple of years is, I think, probably better. But I really like to see what changes and what stays the exact freaking same. Fat to see. And that's it. Thumbs up, subscribe. More videos on the screen. Let me know your stats, your goals for next year, and I will see you in the comments. Bye.